Welcome to the Tag Talks podcast. Today I'm joined by Coach Jake Tuura. Jake, how you doing today?
Doing good, man. How about you?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you for coming on here. Let's just get started with some simple stuff. So where are you from originally? Where are you working now? What position do you hold? And then a brief overview of your coaching career and how you got to where you're at.
Yeah, I'm from Northwest Wisconsin, a small town. It's called Ulu, Wisconsin. It's between Superior and Ashland, Wisconsin. So my whole career, right now I'm at Youngstown State. I'm an assistant strength coach. I run online business, sell ebooks. But the whole process was pretty difficult because I kind of grew up in the middle of nowhere. So it's like, the field for you to get jobs is through connections a lot of times. So I got my undergrad, and then I got into grad school, and one of my grad school professors knew Cal Dietz at University of Minnesota. So he hooked me up with an internship with Cal. And then from there, I interned there in the summer, and then I kind of volunteered for a year. I got a job at a Division II University of Minnesota Duluth. And then I applied everywhere and got this job at Youngstown State. So I've been here for about 3 years, and that's kind of how it happened. Yeah, so it kind of sucked growing up and having no connections at all. But that one guy in grad school really liked me for some reason. I don't know why. And then that connection with Cal, and then things from there just kind of took off. So I guess I kind of got lucky.
I mean, yeah, I guess if you're going to get your foot in the door, Cal's a pretty good person to get your first opportunity with. He's a pretty big name in the industry.
Yeah, definitely. Getting to a Big Ten. And then we also intern with all the other strength coaches. But yeah, being able to just putting it on a resume, putting that you were at Minnesota, like the hiring bodies within college are sometimes administrators or maybe sport coaches that aren't that knowledgeable. So maybe they see a logo and they're like, oh, they must know what they're doing. So it's like sometimes that stuff matters. It probably shouldn't, but that's how it is.
I was just going to say it probably shouldn't matter, but a lot of the hiring and that kind of stuff is purely based on clout. Oh, that guy came from a Big Ten school. All right, he must be good. And that's definitely not true. Not the case for you, but definitely not true.
Yeah. It's dude, I've seen a number of I would say sport coaches who have that go. Well, here that's the whole problem with coaching education or strength coaching education is you leave the place and you become who you interned under. I left. And I didn't just intern under Cal. Like I was there for a summer. It was about a third of my time was at his gym, and Cal's never really there because he's doing all this stuff with RPR and whatever he's doing. But you look at the system that impressed you, and then you go to your next job and you apply it, and you basically become that person. Unless you can increase your awareness and be like, look at what you're doing and realize if it fits in that setting or not. But that's a problem with, I would say that's a problem with sport coaching, is sport coaches go and they intern under someone or they go assist under someone, and then they come to their head coach position and they go and run the same drills and the same practices and the same tactics within the game. And it's like, that's not knowledge. That's just you copying someone. You have no knowledge at all. You're just doing what, like a monkey could do that, So
but what works for Alabama football is not going to go work at University of Minnesota Duluth, right? Like they're not the same caliber of athlete.
I know, but the problem is if you're talking to a coach and they're like, well, it worked there, it's going to be like, are they going to listen to me as a strength coach who doesn't have that history of success? So the analogy, our women's soccer coach here, we talk about this often, but the analogy we use is we'd say LeBron James eats bananas,
Yeah.
Eats bananas, so everybody should be eating bananas. Like that's literally what you're saying when you're copying the drills that you learned when you interned under someone else. That's literally what you're saying. Is you're saying, or let's say Joel Embiid in the 76ers, he eats a cheeseburger and gets a massage before a game. So our whole basketball team needs to be doing that because he's one of the best players in the world. That's the same level of application because there's no critical thinking at all. But that's what's frustrating with coaching and sport coaching is you deal with people like that.
100%. And that's a perfect analogy too, that just really like exemplifies the absurdity of the thought process for these people when they think it can just be copy and paste. But, you talked about kind of actually getting knowledge rather than just copy and pasting. A big part of that for me is listening to podcasts and books. What are some of the go-to podcasts and books that you go to kind of gain more knowledge?
Yeah. So I would say I listen to Joel Smith's podcast a lot, Just Fly Sports. But recently, I guess I've taken a break from a lot of that stuff. I really focused on my patellar tendon is for the last like 2 months. I've just only, or maybe 3-4 months. I don't know. That's all I focused on for the most part. But for people, yeah, trying to learn new things or like developing knowledge, it's like, I think the most powerful thing you can have is find someone that you can find someone that's at a spot you want to be and just go hang around them. Go intern under them, go whatever for free if you can do that. Like you can listen to every podcast in the world and read every book in the world. It's not going to change you. Like, yes, it's good knowledge, but it doesn't change you. You listen to it and then you're like, wow, this is really cool. And then you go back to default, you go back to your routine, you go back to who you were. You know, it's very rare that you're going to listen to something or read a book that's going to actually change your life and stick. But if you can go hang around somebody and they can change your mind and you see them for, 12 hours of the day, every single day, that can actually change you. So we have, when I first got at Youngstown, we had a soccer coach. He got fired. They hired a new one. This guy is still currently at Youngstown. Our women's soccer program is not good still, but whatever. It takes a while to build that. You got to recruit the right athletes, everything. But this guy is Brian Schrum. He actually just got his doctorate in, I believe, in something human performance. But he's been someone that has really changed. I would say it changed my life, changed my philosophy on everything that I do. Mainly looking at how I view strength and conditioning and like flipping it on its head and being like, a lot of things that I value are completely stupid and completely irrelevant to a girl putting the ball in the back of a soccer net, you know? So I could have listened to podcasts and I could have read books, but when you can be around someone like that, that's the most powerful thing. Not saying people shouldn't listen to podcasts and read, because you've probably met a lot of people that never read books and never listen to podcasts, and they're also idiots. But the most powerful thing, I think, is finding, I guess we'd say you find a mentor, you know, you find a mentor and you go hang around them. That would be the most important thing. Like if someone is not knowledgeable about strength and conditioning and they go hang around Cal Dietz, you're going to be pretty knowledgeable after about a month. You're probably going to be more knowledgeable than you could be if you read every single strength conditioning book or listen to every single podcast. So being around a person is, I think, way more powerful.
No, that's a great perspective. And honestly, one that's super refreshing, because most of the time people are just plugging, you want to learn about Cal Dietz, read triphasic training. It's like, it's not the same. And 100%.
And dude, you see it with, you can see it now with the quarantine, is like the amount of knowledge, the amount of sharing of podcasts or webinars and stuff that people are consuming, and you might not be applying any of it. You know, you might just be getting more knowledge, and then you never apply anything. So you're not changing your coaching philosophy because you never applied it. You've never seen if it actually works. And then you just go back to doing the same old thing. So for me personally, I've taken a big break from a lot of that stuff. And I try to balance that out. It's obviously, if you're at a gym and you can't train athletes, you're at a university, you can't train athletes, and you're just developing knowledge, like that stuff's not going to do anything unless you can actually apply it. You
Exactly.
know? And that whole, so that's the problem right now, is I think you get so much knowledge, but what is it doing? How are you changing your practice? You know?
Yep. And then you're getting that information overload. You get into paralysis by analysis because you have no idea how to even move forward, because you have so many things rattling around your brain. Like you said, just simplify it and figure out what can you actually apply in the situation that's specific to you and what's in front of you with your athletes, your team, your facility, what have you.
Yeah.
All right. Last one on the kind of more nebulous questions. What is like 1 to 2 of the biggest mistakes that you see high school athletes making? Obviously you guys have athletes coming in your private business. You work with high school athletes, I'm sure. So what are some of the mistakes that you see kind of across the board?
Specifically, I don't know. Could you explain that a little more? Like, with their own training or what?
Yeah, just in training, lifestyle. Like, I just know from my experience when I was at university and I had incoming freshmen as like these kids that didn't care about anything other than pounds on the bar. Like movement quality didn't matter at all to these kids. They're just like, I need that big number.
I think right now my story is a little different. Like, strength and conditioning is so influenced by the sport of football, American football, that I don't work with football right now. I work mainly my sports are women's sports. The only men's sports I train are men's golf and men's swimming. So it's like pretty much no athletes are really concerned about weight in the bar, you know?
That's good.
Like and being with females, in my experience, you work with a female team, it's a lot easier for them to come in and listen to you. I can have my agenda and they're going to follow it. A male sport will want to fight that, because of ego or whatever. But I would say that I don't see that issue with them caring more about the weight on the bar, the movement quality. I would say still something I struggle with is we can, like, okay, I was talking to one of our men's swimmers today. We had this men's swimmer from India. This dude, like, great dude, works super hard. I was like, man, this job is so weird. I'm in here with so much knowledge that I've accumulated over the last decade. And then I get a text message from one of the players like, can we do more core work? Can we do more ab work? And it's like, man, like the amount of knowledge I have, and maybe it's useless knowledge because it's like periodization or programming and stuff like that. And it's like, it doesn't take into account the athlete's perception, and I would say if we're talking about an issue with an athlete, something that I think is a problem is like, if you don't kill them in the gym, they don't see it's beneficial, Mm-hmm. And I still struggle with that. It's like, how can we do things to make their perception like positive, like make it them think they had a positive workout, something that's actually helping them, without having to absolutely destroy them every day, Yeah. And that's if they care in the first place, because I think a lot of them come into sports and they don't even care. They're there for the scholarship, or they're there for the family and stuff like that. So if you give them an easy day, they're going to be like, oh, this is great. I'm still getting my money, my scholarship, So I think I would say, like, an issue is like, realize the reason why you're playing the sport. And if you don't doing it because you love the sport, I think it's probably for the wrong reason. And it's going to be a little bit more difficult when it's going to be difficult for me to train you, I guess. And then another issue is like, you just think you need to kill yourself every day and you don't really have to do it. So I've tried to find ways around that, because I'm not going to completely dismiss an athlete's perception. Something like the long duration isometrics, although some people just hate them, but you can do long duration isometrics and absolutely destroy someone and they can come back the next day and be fine. Yeah. There's not really any other training method that you can do that. So you can make an athlete happy by giving them stuff where it absolutely kills them and they feel they got a good workout, and you could have done all the beneficial stuff beforehand that you think is beneficial. But that's what's so difficult, man, is like the perception. Like I do games, like it's something I've done. People talk about, I do games and warm-ups. I do spike ball, or I do med ball, volleyball, or something like that. And it's like for some of them, the perception is this is fun and we're getting warmed up. And for some of them, they're like, I want to stretch. I don't want to do this. It doesn't make me ready to lift. It's like, so to deal with an athlete's perception when you work with a huge team, say like 30 people, that is so difficult to do. And often I'm just like, man, screw it. Like this is how I want this to go. So I gotta have energy, and I gotta lead you all to make it the way I want it to be,
Yeah. Well, I think in your answer there, it really shows how you're trying to actually communicate with your athletes, figure out where they're at, and then just find a way to meet them in the middle. Take all the knowledge that you have, but understand that they don't perceive things the same way as you, and then find, okay, what's the best course of action where I can kind of make them feel like they're being satisfied, but also make sure I'm checking my boxes. And it kind of takes me to back to a story like you specifically said about athletes getting sore. I remember when I was at the university, I just started and I had a conversation with this guy because he was like killing it, and then all of a sudden things just fell off. And I'm like, hey man, what's going on? Like things are, you're nosediving here. So, I've been doing 3 to 4 extra workouts a week on my own outside of our training. And I'm like, okay, how come? Well, I'm just never sore. Like every time I leave the gym, like it's a great workout, but I'm just never sore. So I got to find ways to just thrash my body because, I need that to like get results. I was like, oh God. Okay. So, all right, man. Well, how about this? What can we do here in the workouts with me to maybe, make you feel like you don't have to go to the gym and wreck yourself on your own? Like, let's find a way for your 4 workouts with me. Let's find a way to make that the only 4 lifts you do in a week, but make sure that you feel that that's enough. And so I worked with them, and then eventually, things started to get back up. But for me, it was an absolute blind spot because I was like, hey, you know what? Like, I know they shouldn't be leaving the gym sore every day. So I thought, oh, I'm doing my job. But here I am. They think they're not doing enough. And then they're going and ruining everything that I'm trying to program and put together for them just because they're trying to chase that feeling. And like you said, it's all because their perception of what good training actually looks and feels like is completely skewed.
Dude, yeah, you probably see it a lot in the strength world on like Instagram, where it's like just because you're sore and sweaty doesn't mean it's a good workout or something like that. It's like, for me, I'm like, dude, that's like probably 99% of athletes think that
Yeah.
if you were sore and sweaty, it was a good workout, So us communicating to other strength coaches with that idea, that's kind of useless because athletes aren't hearing it, like their perception's still the same. One thing though, like you talked about my communication, I actually don't explain things a whole lot. That's just my personality. That's just my leadership style. I don't know why I'm like that. I think my father was like that, or my older brother. It was not a lot of explanation. It was like, go figure it out yourself, And coaches I had where they just were like, figure it out yourself. That's kind of what I connected with. So that's kind of the style that I have. I will explain things, yes, if people are interested, but often, like we were talking off air, like there's very rarely people that care about the things we care about,
Yeah.
or the certain terminology we can use to explain something. But there was we were also talking about the book 48 Laws of Power. He had a chapter in the 48 Laws of Power where it was win through actions, never through argument. So he said, demonstrate, don't explicate. So if we get on the board and we explain to athletes why we're doing the programming in this certain manner and stuff like that, it's like if we're going up there to try to prove them wrong in the first place, I think it's wrong. But I think, like, if we could find a way to demonstrate and to show them through actions instead of trying to win them over through argument, I think things will go a lot better, because everyone is emotional and they don't. How much emotion is there when you draw a little graph on the board?
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing. But
Yeah.
I think if you're a strength coach, maybe you're a strength coach that can embody the qualities that they want to possess, that gives an emotional connection, and maybe they want to listen to you more. I would use an example like if you personally were gonna put on a basketball clinic, you would have to stand in front of 100 of these kids, and you would have to sell them to why they need to listen to you. But if Kobe Bryant walked in, he wouldn't have to sell them at all.
Mm-hmm.
He would sell them immediately because he embodies the qualities they want, and that's the highest form of leadership. So I think when we talk about explaining why something works, it's like if I can be someone who embodies qualities that these other athletes want to possess, whether that's like muscle mass or strength or athletic performance, I think things go a lot better over time. Not saying if you're a morbidly obese strength coach that you can't connect with people, but I think it makes it probably a little bit harder,
Yeah. No, I think I think you hit the nail right on the head there. It's honestly, it's just about the athletes in front of you and really understanding, like, what do they value and what's important to them. Cause I can sit here and talk about all this periodization strategies and this and that and whatever until I'm blue in the face. But if they don't value that or they don't care, what the heck was the point of it? Right?
Yeah.
It meant nothing. It meant absolutely nothing. So
yeah.
That's a big one. Like we mentioned a few books here. Like a big one for me in my development as a coach was reading Conscious Coaching by Brett Bartholomew. That one was just a game changer, because it was like, all right, every one of these athletes is different. Every one of them has a different personality style. Everyone has a different learning style, and they all have different value structures. I can't just come in here and impose my value structures, my learning styles, and my personality onto these guys. I have to be a little bit of a chameleon, actually get to know them on a real level, and actually give a shit about them to figure out what they value, what their learning style is, what their personality is, and then meet them where they're at. Because if I'm good at what I do, I should be able to explain strength and conditioning in the stupidest, most simplest terms. So I just have to figure out which terms are going to jive with you, and I'll make it sync. But I can't do that unless I do my research, and my research is on the floor chumming it up with the fellas or with the ladies. I don't really work with that many ladies, but you got to get to know the people. You got to be chill. You got to be on their level, get to know them, and then figure out how can I come in and lead these people by being honest on the same level with them, like a flat circle instead of a pyramid where you're at the top just talking down on everyone. We all got to be together, because we're not going to get anywhere if we're not.
Yeah, dude, that book, it was kind of overwhelming for me, I guess. I don't know how many, like, what do you call them, archetypes or something? How many different types you had? It was like, I don't know how to apply this, and then I kind of struggle between, like, us, like, okay, so the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, you ever read that?
Yep.
By Stephen Covey?
Yep.
The thing about seek first to understand, then to be understood. It's like, okay, I get that side, and I think people could be like that. But also, like, if we look at ourselves as being in a leadership role, a lot of the best leaders in history, they did not seek first to understand. They said, this is the way we're doing it, and you're going to listen to me. Like maybe someone like Hitler, he's probably one of the best leaders that ever existed. Obviously doesn't have to be a good guy, to be a good leader. But that's what I struggle with, is like, where should we stand between that stuff? And I think sometimes I've worked with athletes where I'm like, man, it probably would be good if I didn't even train you. I'm not your guy. I'm not meant for you. And if I try to use all these tactics to try to understand you, it's going to take away from who I am. And I'm going to be a less genuine, authentic person myself. So it's like sometimes, and that's what sucks at the college level is if I'm given, like, let's say a swim team, there's 50 people that come in, there's probably going to, if I'm being myself, there's probably going to be 5 or 10 people that are not going to like me at all. And I would not be the best strength coach for them. They probably would be better go and work with somebody else. But do I be myself? Or do I try to cater to them and change who I am and then kind of lose myself in the process? I don't know where I stand with that, but it's something that I think about consistently.
Well, and on that conversation, I think just to kind of loop back to where we kind of started this whole thing, there's gaining knowledge and then there's applying. So I read Brett Bartholomew's book. He kind of exposed me to a different way of thinking, but I don't sit there and go, okay, what archetype is this kid? And no. I know who I am. I know what I stand for. I just have to if you think of a Venn diagram, I'm not going to compromise on who I am because people are smart. They'll cut through that bullshit in a heartbeat. So I can't do that. I just have to find what little smidge of my circle might overlap with their circle and just try and speak to them with that little voice. And some people, our circles overlap like this, and some of them, they don't even touch. And that's the beauty of being in the private sector, because if my circle doesn't touch with your circle, I ain't the right coach for you. See ya. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty. I've done that many a times. Honestly, when I was younger, I didn't know how to go about it. So I would just tell the parents and the kids, I don't train people anymore. The industry wasn't for me. Sorry. And I would just kind of like shuck them off and then, keep doing the things with the kids that I liked working with and were working well with me and all that stuff. So that was my path of least resistance when I was a young coach. It's just, I quit. I don't train anymore, man. I'm sorry. No, that was a good banter back and forth, man. I love it. Let's get into some of the meat and potatoes. So I think I was thinking about this before, and I've been following you for a while, so I've seen all the kind of stuff that you put out, and I love it. And I'd say as a blanketed statement for the athletes that I've met in my life, like maybe you see things a little different because you're working with swimmers and golfers, and I just don't have any experience in that world. So you can correct me if I'm wrong. But as a blanketed statement, I would say that almost all athletes want to jump higher and probably be able to dunk because it's sweet. And they want to look big and be jacked. Like I just feel like all the athletes that I've encountered in my life, whether it's football, hockey, lacrosse, rugby, wrestling, whatever, I would just say that that's a blanketed statement. And that's kind of why I wanted to get you on and connect with you, because I think you've done a really good job of creating products and programs that kind of make both of those things more accessible, because a high school athlete thinks if they want to be big and jacked, their only option is to just follow Arnold Schwarzenegger's Encyclopedia of Muscle Building, and they're just going to follow the chapters in that. Like, we know that that's not conducive for performance. Or if they want to jump higher, like, they don't actually know how to go about that. And I think what you've done is a great job of saying, like, hey, here's a plan. So I would love for you to be able to talk about those things and how you've been able to diffuse both of those goals and keep them relevant to the kind of modern day athlete.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, a lot of my, are mainly women's sports, also women's tennis, women's basketball, women's soccer. So it's like they don't want to get jacked. No, none of them care about it. If they get big traps or shoulders, they're gonna be mad at you. I mean, they got to have the hormones in the first place to get that, and like some higher testosterone females will get that, but or higher, whatever the androgen is for them. I don't know what it's called. It's not testosterone. What is it called? The females, I don't know. But anyways. Yeah, but most men, yes, are like that, I would say. And I think it's probably an insecurity. I mean, the issue why I got into lifting was like I was a kid that was small. He was weak, not good at basketball. My sport was basketball. I sucked at basketball. So I was insecure about all that. So I got into lifting. And then I got bigger. I got stronger. I could jump higher. improve performance. But so the only reason I care about all that stuff is because I started at the absolute bottom. The only reason why I wrote my jump resisting protocol is because I had jump resisting for about 3 years. Like the only way I think for me to release effective products or talk about something effectively is to go through it myself, you know? So if you want to talk about ACL rehab, I'm not your guy to talk about ACL rehab. I have good ideas maybe, but like I've never been through it. So I don't really care. And not just like my personal experience, but because I've suffered with jump resisting, I've had hundreds of people reach out to me with jump resisting so I can get their feedback too, or people that have been small, unathletic, not strong. I've been able to work with them. So I've been able to see that throughout this whole journey. But yeah, dude, I got into, when I first started my website, Jack the Athlete, it was like, how do you train for everything at once? Because we have that program. That program's out there. What is it called? Like Bigger, Faster, Stronger or something. Yep. I've never actually seen it, but
Me
that's
neither.
like,
it's like Bill Starr from back in like the 70s or something.
Yeah. But it seemed like it was a pretty common thing that like high schools were doing. I have no clue what it encompassed, but that's kind of what I talk about. And I have tried a lot of programs. Like I used to do jump programs because initially I just cared about basketball. I did like jump attack and I probably did every jump program out there except for like Air Alert. I think Air Alert had a lot of calf raises and stuff, or like kind of some like bodyweight calf raises, stupid things in there. But yeah, so I went through this whole process of trying to do these programs, and then it's like, okay, you do a vertical jump program for 8 weeks, but you might not have any strength and you have no hypertrophy, you know? So like you go do one thing, but you sacrifice everything else, you know? And then it's like, I have done powerlifting because I did powerlifting meet. So I do just a strength phase for, let's say 2-3 months. You develop strength, but you didn't focus on hypertrophy or athleticism at all. Or you do a hypertrophy phase and all you do is time under tension, sets of 8 to 20 or something like that. And then you don't have any strength and you have no athleticism. So it's like, and the reason I think why we isolate like that is because in the strength field, we talk about the conflicting adaptations. Like what is, I can't think of the term right now. You know what I'm saying though, where it's like,
yeah, oh yeah.
You can't train for a marathon race and a powerlifting meet simultaneously. You're going to sacrifice gains in one of the things. You know, it's like the jack of all trades, the master of none. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, cool. But I think that's also garbage. I think that if you're at the top level of whatever top level of performance, then you can do a block periodization type approach. You know, then you deserve to be doing stuff like that. But for 99% of people, you don't need to do that. You can train for all these things at once, you know? And the way I separate it now is like looking at like how could bodybuilding improve vertical jump? How, you know, I mean, I think we look at strength as kind of being in the middle. Like if you develop hypertrophy, your strength potential is better. If your strength potential is better, then your vertical jump is probably better. Because I mean, strength coaches basically understand that, but the thing is like, if we're interested in vertical jump, like a performance metric, vertical jump, change of direction, sprinting speed, I look at it it's a neurological thing, like your brain and your spinal cord, and then it's a structural thing. Like you need to have the structures in place, whether that's like your tendon, your muscle, your bones, your ligaments. Those, if you don't have the structures there and you're just doing neurological stuff, that's probably where injuries come down the line, because you don't have the structure, you don't have the robust muscle mass, you don't have the tendon strength and stiffness, and I think that's where you would get hurt down the line. So I look at doing, let's say one of my programs is hypertrophy clusters, like a huge focus on structure, but there's also athletic things and also heavy lifting in there. But the majority of the volume is for hypertrophy, and the hypertrophy stuff develops the structures the best, like basically muscle mass, because tendon, I guess we can talk about that a little bit later. Tendon is kind of weird with how it's going to adapt to training, but we do so much focus on structure. You develop this huge structure of muscle mass, and then it's like now you have basically so much more raw material and so much ability to stay healthy when you go into the explosive neurological stuff, you know? Mm-hmm. So you do like one of my programs is hypertrophy clusters. I don't care. Athlete can do any hypertrophy program in the world. And then you would go into more of a neurological focus, which would be a lot of jumping, a lot of more explosive type lifting, and just do those two back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You'd stay healthier in the long run, and then you just slowly improve your vertical jump, and you get jacked at the same time, and you improve strength. So it's like, this is what people have done with me, is like they buy my products and they just go back and forth. And assuming you can stay entertained, maybe you need to add a little bit more variation throughout it. I think that's where you can consistently get gains in both areas. because I think an issue when we talk about being the jack of all trades, master of none, like you could train something explosive in every lift and then do something heavy and then do hypertrophy. But how long can you last doing that, week after week? Like it gets boring to do the same exact type of workouts week after week. So it's like, I think that's where you got to look at yourself. What can you be consistent with? And should you do maybe an 8-week hypertrophy block, or maybe you need to do 4 weeks because you get bored, and then maybe you do 4 weeks of explosive training and I'm not a fan of strength blocks because I think strength blocks, doing a decent volume at an intensity higher than 80%, in my experience, just beat me up, just made me feel like trash. So if I do over 80%, it's going to be like 1, 2, or 3 sets or something, and I'm done with it.
Yeah.
And you can still get stronger like that. It's not that hard. But anyways, I hope this is all making sense. That
you're good.
For athletes to develop all those qualities, you basically just need to train all of them. But you need to figure out, it's not going to happen fast. It's going to happen over a number of years. So it's like, how can you consistently train like that? If you're someone have you ever done a Christian Thibodeau's neurotyping system?
No, but I was actually going to say that too. When you're talking about people getting bored and all this stuff, I'm like, that's where the neurotyping would come in, but I've never done it myself.
Yeah, dude, it's great. I don't know how much it is, $200, maybe 300. Yeah. Like it is totally worth it. Like you learn so much. People argue whether it's correct or not. I think you can see it if you train athletes, but you got to see what you can be consistent with. Like my personality type is an explosive personality type where like I love variation, I love jumping. If you give me the same workout week after week, I'm going to be so bored. I'm going to be like, I can't do this anymore. And then there's a personality type that likes control. They like safety. They like to do the same exact workout day after day. They like to see slow incremental progress. But I think if someone likes my work, they're not the control, security type or safety type person. There's no way. Because that person does not like explosive training. They don't like jumping, I guess. They don't like that type of stuff. They like to feel a burn. They like to feel the movement. They like it to be slow and controlled. That's not necessarily like me. So you got to see what type of person you are and what you can be consistent with. Because if you can't be consistent with the type of training you're doing, there's no way you're going to see results, because nobody increases vertical jump. Vertical jump is a long-term thing. You can increase it over 5 weeks. I do have my plan is 5 weeks, but it's meant to be like you cycle back with it, or you understand the ideas enough to apply them down the line. But it's going to be a long-term thing. Anyone who's been in the dunking game has been like, I've got here after 10 years, I got here after 15 years. Nobody really does it in the short term. If you do it in the short term, that's probably where injuries might come up, or jumpers in here or something like that. So, yeah, man, it's a long process, but see what you can enjoy and understand the ways that you can accomplish that,
No, I think to try and diffuse all that, there's so much gold there. And, like I love and I agree with everything you're saying, but the way I'm trying to diffuse that information is just to maybe help people kind of comprehend it. It's like, think of it as a continuum, right? You have structure, and then you have like your neural end, right? And if you live on the neural end and you don't do any structure, you're going to get injured, right? If you do just structure work and you do no neural, you're going to get injured. So if your long-term strategy is to be able to jump, well, like logic would just say, live somewhere in the middle. Find a strategy that's somewhere in the middle, maybe shaded a little bit more here, maybe shaded a little bit more here. Depends on your personality type, your preference, whatever you can commit to. But find your little window and work in there and commit to it and be patient. It's like we just diffused the recipe for how to get results regardless of what your goal is. Like establish the constituent components, put it on a continuum, find a place in the middle, and then stick to it.
Yeah. I think the problem, if we're trying to talk to athletes, is like we'll often look at the best athletes in the world and say, well, they did this type of training, and it's like, okay, I went from, let's say my vertical jump was probably around 20 inches. I went to around a 20-inch vertical to my best was around like 39 and a half. I got approach. I don't test it enough. I don't really care anymore. I care about dunking. And I feel like the better I get at dunking, my approach vertical is not really that good because they're both individual skills. Mm-hmm. But if we're talking about you're an athlete that has a 20-inch vertical and you want to take it to 40 inches, you need to do something different than the dude who was born with a 40-inch vertical. Because the dude with the 40-inch vertical, he might not ever need to train structure at all. That's just how his body's built.
Yeah, he's wired different.
yes, your body is not built like that. You can try to do his training, sure, but then you're probably going to talk to one of us when you're like, dude, I got jumper's knee, you know. You're going to be like, dude, I blew out this or I blew out that. It's like, because you're literally trying to change your physiology, you know. Like, you were not meant to jump 40 inches. Your body was meant to jump 20 inches, and now you're trying to change it. And because we're intervening on your body, you need to have more of an intelligent approach, because some people are just born with it. And that's who you're going to see, like LeBron. I mean, not to take away any hard work anyone had, but it's like, if you're going to be LeBron James, you got to be born with a certain amount of genetics. And a lot of kids that are looking for lifting advice don't have that type of genetics. If you did, you wouldn't be looking at our work, you know?
Yeah, 100%. The people that look at our work are like, you know, they might be in the top 10%, and then they're looking for some help. But the people that are at that level, and all these kids are trying to chase, those people are in the top like 0.1%. And I think it takes me back to something that James Smith said, and I maybe will butcher it a little bit, but it's, these people are doing these things in spite of their coach, right? Like, you can see what LeBron James does, or any elite athlete. I know one that was popular a while back was like Alvin Kamara, running back. He has like a barbell and these kettlebells swinging all around. He's doing all this crazy stuff. Every kid's going to watch that and think, this is what I need to be doing because Alvin Kamara is great. Or I see LeBron do this and I need to do that because LeBron is great. It's like, LeBron is great no matter what. My grandma knows jack shit about strength and conditioning. Almost guaranteed she could train either one of those guys and they'd still be where they're at, right? They're cut from a different cloth. So stop pretending. This is actually something that Adam said, Adam Menner, when I had him on. He said one of the biggest mistakes he sees athletes making is they don't live in objective truths. So they think, I could be like LeBron James if I just train with him. It's like, look yourself in the mirror, kid. You're 5'6", you're a little overweight, and you're unathletic. You're never going to be that guy. But find a strategy that's going to work for you, commit to it over time, and in 5 years, guess what? Your 20-inch vert might actually be 32. But if you're always comparing yourself to the elite of the elite of the elite and thinking you should be doing what they're doing, man, you're going to fail. You're going to fail.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. So in terms of like, that was a ton of gold there on the vertical jump stuff. In terms of your hypertrophy clusters, I'm familiar with your work on the hypertrophy clusters, but how did you approach going about hypertrophy? Maybe a little bit different than your typical 3 sets of 8 to 20 reps.
Yeah. So that was part of the process when I think I had done a powerlifting meet or something, but then I was still like interested in hypertrophy, you know, like, so it's like, separating the phases, dude. Okay. This whole process is just like, how do you fit in hypertrophy, strength, and power? You know, how do you fit in all this stuff at once? And obviously if you're going to sacrifice something by trying to do all at once. So it's like, how do you get hypertrophy, but also not kill your strength? Because if you do hypertrophy, your velocity, you just feel like garbage if you're doing hypertrophy, because the volume has to be high. The quality of training will often get pretty low, you know, like the velocity will get pretty low and the quality of rep might get pretty low. So it's like, you just don't see bodybuilders who are good explosive athletes, you know. It's just very counterintuitive. So I got into that because there was a video. Jonathan Oliver, he's a guy that does research on cluster sets for hypertrophy, and he had a video. It's actually kind of hard to find on YouTube. I had watched it a number of times, and it basically was like, they did a study on 4 sets of 10 versus 8 sets of 5. That was the whole, basically the idea behind the study. And it was trained Marines. So like, these people were actually good lifters, because a lot of studies they'll do on like recreational kids, yeah. Which what does it mean? Or older people?
Proves nothing.
Yeah. So these people were actually trained people. So like, after, I think it was 12 weeks, 4 sets of 10 versus 8 sets of 5, same intensity, same length of time, because they cut the rest periods down in the 8 sets of 5. But when you look at it, the 4 sets of 10, that was freaking brutal. But that's how hypertrophy training is. It is brutal. These guys, they were like failing reps. They had to force reps and stuff like that once the intensity got higher. But they saw that the lean mass gain was pretty similar at the end of it, and the strength gain was better in 8 sets of 5, and the velocity gain in I think it was a squat, maybe a vertical jump, and then a bench press. The velocity gain was better after the 12 weeks. So it's like, you get just as big by doing the clusters, and you get stronger and you get more powerful. So it's like, why would you not do hypertrophy clusters? if you are like a team sport athlete or someone interested in performance, why, if you're doing a hypertrophy phase, why would you do 4 sets of 10 squats when you could do 8 sets of 5? You keep the quality higher. Like maybe if you're doing 4 sets of 10 squat and maybe it's 70% load, 75% load, like your last few reps are going to get pretty slow and they're going to look like garbage. You're probably going to start like rounding your low back, stuff like that. So that's not things you want athletes to be doing. So you can keep the intensity higher. And at the end of the 8 sets, you usually feel like your nervous system's like buzzing, like you feel good, versus you do 4 sets of 10, you feel like you want to lay down and feel like garbage.
Yeah, you're like, where's the bucket?
Again, if you're interested in just hypertrophy, I would say maybe the other way's better. Maybe just absolutely destroying yourself after every set. That might be better. But I've never been like, let's just all hypertrophy. I don't even want to touch a basketball or get on a basketball court. I always want to get on a basketball. So it's like, if I'm doing real hypertrophy stuff, that's just going to destroy me. And I'm talking just for compound movements. If you're doing like a bicep curl, don't do clusters. Who cares?
Yeah.
Kill yourself with the bicep curl. Like the global stress load is so low. And a lot of the smaller muscles, like you have to do higher rep stuff or more burnout stuff to actually get that stuff to grow. But if you're doing like a bench press in a row or a pull up or a deadlift or a squat or a split squat, these are exercises that let you use a heavy load, but you can keep the quality better, you can keep the velocity better, and those are things that are going to be conducive for your performance in the long run. So it's pretty simple stuff. It's just like, not many people have stepped out, I think, to actually try it, So I put the product out, and I had a number, like I've had hundreds of people try it, and it's just, I think, the best way for athletes to train if they want to do a hypertrophy phase.
Yeah, like you said there, like you just gave off a list of reasons why it just makes more sense. And then from a coaching perspective, like, all right, you said you're 100% right. You tell someone to do 4x10 back squats, first off, they're going to roll their eyes because they say, this is trash. Like, this is torture, man. And then you're going to do, let's be generous. And let's say 7 reps of every set are high quality, good form, decent bar speed, all that. Okay, so 3 reps from every set are garbage. So why, through the accumulation of all those sets and reps, why accept the fact that 12 of them are just going to be shit and the athlete's going to hate it? Why not just break it up, increase quality, increase bar speed? And then as a coach, if you're doing the clusters, you also get that little second in between to say, hey, I saw X, Y, or Z on your last rep. Focus on this. So it's literally so logical that it's silly that we're not, like, it's just not commonly practiced. Like, it was one of those things too. I've just never been a fan of like high volume barbell training. The only time I will, like, for compound movements, that is, the only time I will like explore that is if it's like a decent lifter and it's something that they like. Like I have a guy that I train, absolute sicko. Like he wants that stuff. Like a 4x20 barbell back squat, he would probably be like, oh, that's awesome. I'll probably die. It's going to be the greatest. So, and he's a good lifter. And if he likes that, sure, man, why not? Let's go. Let's have some fun. But he's an anomaly. Let's make it simple. Let's make it better and let's get better results from it. Beat people up less, because at the end of the day, if you're an athlete, doing a barbell back squat really has essentially zero relevance to your sport. So let's not kill you on that. Let's kill you on the court or in something that's going to actually improve your performance. So I think that's awesome.
Sorry to go further on that. Like like there's a lot of research on hypertrophy. Like Chris Beardsley is one guy, strength conditioning research, who does a lot of stuff on hypertrophy. But the problem is, I don't know if the dude's ever touched a weight in his life, but whatever he does, there's valuable stuff there. But something he's talked about is effective reps for hypertrophy. I don't know if you've seen that. Like his idea on effective reps for hypertrophy, and it has to be 5 reps within failure. Like if we're doing, let's say you do 70%, and this is based on the concentric the speed of the rep, because we need he's saying you need the muscle fiber to actually shorten at a slower rate to cause hypertrophy. That's a rep that can cause hypertrophy. If if you're going and you're doing just flying through reps, rep after rep, that's not a rep that's going to be conducive for hypertrophy. That's what his argument is, at least. I don't think it's completely proven, but he said that your set has to be within 5 reps of failure to be a rep that's going to stimulate hypertrophy. So if you do 4 reps that, like, say you do an 8 sets of 5, or let's just say your first 3 reps are like super good speed on the way up, super high quality, those might hit his idea. Those might not be doing anything for hypertrophy. Mm-hmm. It's not until you get to a little bit slower on maybe the 4th rep or maybe the 5th rep, that's a little bit slower. So you have 2 reps that are stimulating hypertrophy. And I think the benefit of clusters is, as long as you get reps that are slowing down a little bit towards the end, you get 8 sets to add those up versus only 4 sets to add those up, you know. And then you have the negatives of the velocity so low and the quality so low. And then I think another benefit is too, if you're doing 8 sets of 5 versus 4 sets of 10, is if you're looking at like a sport like American football, a sport like basketball, most team sports, is the energy systems, like the work to rest ratios. It more mirrors the work to rest ratios, because your set might only last 20 seconds and you rest for 60. Instead of your set lasting 40 seconds and you rest for 120, you're not going to give a 40-second effort in a sport pretty much ever, a team sport ever. It's going to be a lot shorter. So it more mirrors that, because you might have like a 5-second sprint or 3-second sprint in football or something like that, you know, and then a minute of rest or something like that. So it more mirrors that. But one of the issues too, everything that we get a benefit, there's going to be an issue, because you're trying to do 2 things at once. I don't know if you're familiar with John Kiefer. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
John Kiefer, when I was getting into the lifting, the bodybuilding stuff, he had a website. It was called Dangerously Hardcore. He changed it to like Body IO. He's doing really interesting stuff. I'll send you one of his podcasts later on. But he was talking about, why is it that males get so much hypertrophy from training and females don't? And his reason was testosterone, that we have so much more testosterone that if we do, let's say, a heavy set of 3, our testosterone lets us burn through a bunch of glycogen on a heavy set of 3. A female is not going to burn through a bunch of glycogen. And then he was saying that you can pretty much estimate your level of hypertrophy from training by the amount of glycogen that you burned in that session. Mm-hmm. So for us, we have high testosterone. It's very easy for us to burn through glycogen. And if we do, let's say, a heavy set of 10, and then we rest for 3 minutes, it keeps us anaerobic. You know, it keeps us, we burn glycogen, we get 3 minutes of rest, we burn glycogen again. If you did a heavy set of 10 and you rested only 1 minute, and then you did it again, it puts you more aerobic. So you're going to burn less glycogen. So this was his argument, at least. And then was a reason why females who do CrossFit, the intensity is so high that they have to burn glycogen. But if they do like a powerlifting thing, they might not burn so much glycogen. So CrossFit's very good for females if they want hypertrophy, not so much for guys, because guys just have to lift heavy. Mm-hmm. So this is all kind of like speculation. I want to record a podcast with the dude to clear this up, but I thought it was really interesting stuff, which then might go a little counter to the hypertrophy clusters. So maybe if you're doing hypertrophy clusters, you want to rest a little bit more than 1 minute, so you can actually stay more anaerobic, you know, like maybe you rest 90 seconds or 2 minutes or something like that, to keep it an anaerobic stimulus and not keep your body. Because if you do a sprint at 100% and I say continue this for 5 miles, now it's going to be aerobic. It's just going to happen, you know? Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting stuff by him. I wanted to cover those things. Yeah, as far as is it completely wrong because no one else is talking about it? I don't know, but it's interesting stuff to talk about. And I look at the dude. He used to be a physicist, a very smart guy. He actually just moved. He moved like in the last few years to Serbia, and he's just like totally isolated himself and has been working on his own products. But
Oh, you kind of cut out there for a sec. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Oh, your mic cut out for a sec. No, that's super interesting, man. It's I've spent a lot of time just kind of getting familiar with the industry. So whenever I hear a name that I've never heard before, I'm always like perking up, because I'm like,
yeah, he was. I would say this was maybe about 7-8 years ago, and he released the type of content that I connected with. Like so anytime he released anything, I was getting it. And then he disappeared for about 2 years. And then he released a podcast, and right away I went on it. I'm like, dude, I gotta listen to this thing, because his message was like everything I was interested in. It was about getting as big as possible, getting as strong as possible, getting as much athletic performance as possible, like everything I cared about, and maximizing everything to the highest degree. So dude, this was actually in the talking about books, the 48 Laws of Power. There was one where it said use absence to increase value or something like that, where like for him, let's take him for example, I read his stuff for about 5 years. I was like, everything this dude, I love everything he does. And then he disappears for 2 years. He creates absence. And then whenever he came out with a new podcast, I immediately listened to it because he had so much value because he disappeared, you know? So it's like, you can use that. I see that sometimes in the college setting where it's like, I work with athletes all school year and then they're gone for a summer. And it's like, we had some absence and now like my power is slightly increased, assuming they liked me in the first place. Didn't like me, it doesn't matter. But it's like, if you're consistently available and consistently around someone, you can't really create that. So what he did, which was interesting, which maybe coaches can see, where it's like, if you can actually create absence around people, it can actually make you more powerful in a way that you can get them to do what you think they need to be doing, you know? So yeah. Anyways, I would definitely recommend checking him out. He does not put a lot of content out right now, but really, really cool stuff because no one else is talking about it.
Yeah, no, dude, that's super interesting stuff, and I'll definitely dive in that and try and find that podcast for my next walk with the dog. That's when I digest all the podcasts.
I'll send it to you. It was like a 2 or 3 part thing, man. Crazy stuff.
That's unreal. Awesome, man. Well, is there like a few other things that we'll go over before you go, but is there anything else specifically that you kind of want to talk about?
No, man.
No, you got it all off your chest. Well, it was honestly, I loved everything is gold. I think you do a great job of just simplifying everything and making people understand that it doesn't have to be so complicated, right? Like a lot of people that are in our shoes and in this industry, they are actually, they're complication predators, right? They try and overblow everything so that you're so scared and intimidated. You think you have to give them, you have to buy their $600 fancy ass program because they make you so confused while they try and explain it. It's like, man, I love James Smith. Don't get me wrong. I love James Smith. I love learning from him, but like his style of teaching and talking and lecturing does not jive with me. Like, I love it because I can get it, but I know he's not selling that to a kid, right? That kid's scared. So I love people that take complex ideas and make it simple and accessible for people, right?
Yeah, I didn't know if you were aware of James. I was going to bring that up because you had talked about explaining something to an athlete very simply, and it seems like his idea is the exact opposite of, I don't need to explain simply. You need to raise your level of knowledge to understand what I'm saying. And I can understand where he's coming from, at least when you're talking to sport coaches. But it's like, okay, I think it just seems like you're using these big words that maybe you don't need to be using, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of creating confusion, yes. But what's the reason why he does it? I don't know. Is it to help people? Is it to sell more stuff? Because maybe you like kind of mystify your thoughts. I don't know what it is. I'd hate to assume that. But yeah, man, I think yes, it is very simple. And you can learn from the success of other people. And I think when we're talking about coaches or we're talking about athletes, it's just like what people are lacking is the consistency. And I think you're lacking the consistency, especially nowadays, because you have social media and you have you never focus on one thing.
Yeah.
It is impossible for you to focus on one thing. But if you look at anyone who's ever been successful, Steve Jobs, the dude with Amazon, whatever, they focus on one thing and they did one thing. So what I tried to do now, and I'm still currently doing, not that I'm just doing one thing, but for about 2 months, the only thing that I did was patellar tendon. Yep. That is all I did. I didn't care about anything else. I'm like, my focus right now is patellar tendon. So I think I released a resource where and I'm still updating it, but it is the ultimate resource for the patellar tendon. And the only reason I'm able to get that amount of knowledge out there or create that level of service is because I focused on one thing, which was patellar tendon. And if an athlete is like really serious about one thing, then focus on one thing, And yeah. if you got to go and I don't know, take care of your dog or something like that, then maybe you shouldn't have a dog. If you really want to get something done, focus on one thing. And I can say that, but it's nearly impossible for people to actually grasp that idea. But maybe what you have to do is lock yourself in a basement for 2 months and just do that one thing.
No, and that's actually something like when I first, I've been following you for a while. I got a question that I'll ask you in a minute, but I asked Adam who I should try and get on my podcast and chat with, and he said you. Oh, that's awesome. I've been following you for a while. I thought I'd love to have you. I reached out to you. You're like, hey, man, give me a while. I got to get this jumper knees protocol out first. And I was like, dude, mad respect. I love that. I love that from people, because most of us, we just feel obligated to spread ourselves so thin and do all this stuff. And, you know, I struggle with that at times for sure. But when I meet people that are just like, hey, yeah, I'll do that thing, but like right now I'm doing this thing, I'm like, hell yeah, man. I respect that.
Yeah, I remember that, man. Yeah.
Power to you. Okay. So I'll put you on the spot just like I did to Adam. I'll ask you a question. You know, we had a great conversation. It's great for me to learn. It's great to share with other people. Like, who's a guest that I should try and get on my show and chat with?
This is for this is mainly for like athletes.
Yeah, just people that are doing cool stuff that can deliver it in a way that could be accessible to the lay person.
Okay,
not
dude.
necessarily.
I recommend this to my buddy Austin Yoakum. He had Brett Adams. His company is Transcending Performance. I think he's out in Texas. Maybe he's in Missouri. I had him on my podcast a long time ago, but he is talking. I listened to that podcast probably 2-3 times that he just put up. Like, he is talking about performance, like aspects of performance that nobody else is talking about. And I don't know how I can even explain this, but the way he goes about, like, let's say a tennis athlete, like increasing their level of ownership of their own performance, the way he's doing it with the drills and with the practices and the way he can talk about it, nobody else is doing this. So I think his message, he said when he retires, he's going to put out all his content. But I love listening to that dude talk about stuff. And I think you could probably have some good questions for him. So I could send you his contact information, but yeah. I think he's someone huge because something he talks about is strength expression versus intellectual expression. And strength expression, what we've mainly talked about on this show, is very easy. You know, getting an athlete bigger, stronger, faster, freaking easy. Condition, easy stuff. But the intellectual expression of their performance and how do you increase their performance, and a lot of that has to do with their brain. You know, a lot of that has to do with their, I guess we talk a little about perception. But his understanding of intellectual expression, the way he can explain it, I think that would be some eye-opening stuff for you and for your listeners.
I'll definitely love for you to send me his info, and I'll reach out to him. I actually listened to the episode that you did with him, and it was the same thing. It was just like, the second that episode was done, I was like, all right, I'm just going to sit here and think about things for a little bit. Cause you know, that was a refreshing shift in perspective. It's funny that you actually mentioned Austin Yoakum too, because that idea, or that question that I asked you, that was the one that I stole from his podcast. I was listening to his podcast. He's interviewing someone and he's like, you know, who's a guest I should try and get on? I'm like, man, that's awesome. Like, what better way to connect with people that are actually going to, you know, have a good conversation and, you know, be on the same page with you, rather than asking people that you're actually doing that with already. So, you know, I had Tommy John and Adam on, and both of those guys said I should try and get you. We have a great conversation. Now I'm going to try and reach out to some other people, and it's just hopefully this vicious cycle that keeps getting out of hand. I just keep having better conversations that we can share with people. So let people know where they can find you if they're interested in checking out your website, seeing you on social, inquiring about maybe your services or the ebooks you have. Let us know where people can find you, and we'll make sure that I'll link all that stuff in show notes and everything like that.
Yeah, mostly it's Instagram. My name is Jake Tuura, Tuura. My website's jackedathlete.com, again, about hypertrophy, strength, athletic performance. I've been putting a lot on my YouTube for the patellar tendon for jumper's knee. My YouTube is just my name also. But I put out that patellar tendon resource jumper's knee protocol, and I've just been adding – it already has probably 2 hours of video to like on everything for the patellar tendon, which – I'm so interested in because I suffered with for 3 years. That's the only reason I care. A lot of people are not going to care that much, so don't buy it. But if you are curious about the patellar tendon, go ahead and get it. But yeah, I'm consistently adding new videos because I've done podcasts with, I think, 3 tendon researchers now. I'm gonna get another one on. But the more I can talk to these people, it's like, dude, these concepts are so crazy because we understand so little about tendons and so little about the patellar tendon. And I just get bored if I'm just gonna be talking about hypertrophy and strength and all the stuff that's already well established. But tendons are not. Like, we know so little about them and so little about their adaptations, what we need to be doing to train them, how everything else can be affecting them. So yeah, dude, long answer, but those are my things to look up, and my YouTube has a lot of information I think that would be valuable to people too.
That's awesome, man. We'll check him out on Instagram at Jake Tuura. Same thing on YouTube. Thank you so much for coming on, man. It was a great conversation. I had a ton of fun.
Yeah, thanks, man.